Titans, go!
Hello again, Titans fans. Welcome back to TitanTalk, the Titans podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in Titans Tower once again with my fellow Titan Talker, Jesse Jackson, and a special guest star. So, Jesse, first, how are you?
I am good, Charles. Very excited to be kind of wrapping up the season. As we have other podcasts to discuss, so this is kind of nice that we're able to button down Titan Talk for now to move on to other things. So yes, and I'm always happy when we get to talk to our special guest contributor.
Yes, so here for our big Titan Talk 50th episode. Can you believe it's been 50 episodes, you guys? I certainly can't. Joining Jesse and I in Titans Tower, please, everyone, welcome back DJ Nik to Titans Tower. Welcome, DJ Nik. How you doing?
Hey, Charles, and hey, Jesse. Well, what can I say? It's wonderful to be back with you and to do this with you again. You know, we had a wonderful time on our first season recap. And I think, Charles, the word wrap is definitely very, very poignant and meaningful, seeing as it is the season and we are approaching the holidays.
Yes,
absolutely.
As in Christmas wrapping. I get what you're doing. Unless you want to talk about, maybe Christmas in Hollis by Run DMC, because I'm cool with that too. All right.
Absolutely.
So, Nik is joining us all the way, once again, from Milan, Italy, through the magic of the interwebs. So we're able to talk to him. And what we're going to do, everyone, I know Jesse and I just kind of been going through up to this point, going episode by episode, doing our reviews. But here for episode 50 with our Titan Season 2 review, Jesse and Nik and I are going to kind of just do an overview of the season as a whole, of Titan Season 2 as a whole. And, its ups and its downs. We'll talk about that, all the various new characters and get Nik's takes primarily because, hey, he hasn't been on the podcast and he always has some wonderful insights. So we'll just kind of break down the episodes really quickly, one by one. And there's 13 of them, as a lot of you know. And I'm looking forward to getting everybody's takes on as we kind of time travel back to the beginning of the season. I know, Jesse, we never quite expected the season to turn out like it did we?
No, we did not. This was a bumpy, a lot of good things, a lot of bad things. And so I'd like to hear our gifted guest contributor. What were your thoughts about the season, Nik?
Well, Jesse, thank you very much for the gifted. I don't know about that, but thank you very much. I think, our feelings are pretty much, my feelings are pretty much on par with you guys. I would almost equate this season to the season that the Montreal Canadiens are having right now. As in, starting off really, really strong, going through a bit of a slump, and, hopefully seeing the light at the end.
That sounds pretty fair, I think.
I think so too.
Because there were definitely some up and downs in this season, and we'll talk about those. Not as smoothly as we would have liked. I know Jesse and I, after watching Doom Patrol Season 1, to go back to Titans, and we were kind of hoping that Titans would step its game up after Season 1. And to some extent, I think it did. Because I would think, and just real quick show of hands, how many people felt that Titans Season 2 is better than Season 1? I know I did.
Yeah, I would say it's better. Yes.
How about you, Nik?
If I had to compare to, yes, I would say that it was slightly better. I mean, it did correct some mistakes in from season 1, but I am afraid to say that it did bring over some more new mistakes.
Right. And then in our talking, before we joined the podcast, we kind of set this up over, Facebook's instant messaging. And you had mentioned that, Nick, that you have one or two thoughts you'd like to share about this season. So here you go. You finally get your chance to unload, and I hope you're bringing both barrels to unload your thoughts on Titan season 2, because I'm sure you've got some great insights as always. All right, so
I wouldn't be an Italian cowboy if I didn't bring both my guns, right?
Exactly. So now, so let's get into our first episode. First episode of the new season was actually a carryover from season 1, where we had the episode Trigon, which was originally supposed to be Titan's episode 12 of season 1, re-edited and brought over as the first episode of Titan season 2. This was written by Akiva Goldsman and Jeff Johns and Greg Walker, the showrunner of Titans, directed by Carol Banker. And we got our first episode on September 6, 2019. Gentlemen, start your engines. What are your thoughts about the way Titans premiered season 2? You want to go with you, Jesse, first, or should we go with Nick?
I can go.
Okay.
I wish I had taken better notes so I could have gone back and looked at.
That's all right.
What I originally had.
Do you want me to kind of set this up a little bit, maybe?
No. I remember the episode.
Okay.
I just don't remember how I rated it.
Okay.
I know that I felt like
I don't have my ratings either, so don't worry about
it. I don't think they served themselves well by bringing over the Trigon storyline. It was unneeded. I think you should have wrapped that up in the first episode. In the last episode of last season. I know I was very frustrated with the way they wanted a cliffhanger, and I just didn't care for it at all. It was okay. I guess they wrapped the storyline on very quickly, but I think it was from my perspective, I can remember correctly, it was kind of, okay, we've knocked this out. We've kind of done what we need to do. Now we can move forward.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Because I remember, Jesse, that you and I had talked about how this felt like kind of a house cleaning episode, where they had to sweep all the season 1 garbage away and kind of hopefully start fresh for season 2.
Absolutely, yes.
So Nick, what's your thoughts on this one? Were you satisfied with the way it premiered, resolving that season 1 cliffhanger, Dick Grayson? Or were you a little let down by the premiere?
Well, here's the thing. I feel that this should definitely have been the season finale for season 1, because what I saw is, seeing how almost quickly Trigon is dispatched, and you're dealing with a big villain here, which you could do so much with. I felt he was kind of almost thrown away, which I think is one of the weaknesses of this season, as we will see as we progress, is how easily big villains that could, carry an entire season are just thrown away or dealt with so easily. To their credit, I understand that obviously they had to clean house and they had to, as it were, make a clean breast of everything and get rid of, should we say, the rubbish from season 1. But yeah, I was a little bit dissatisfied with how Trigon was handled, because you're building up this big climax. You get the climax, and he kind of sticks around for one episode at the end of season 1 and one episode at the beginning of season 2. On the positive side, we were introduced to Bruce Wayne, I believe, on this episode, which was definitely very cool,
right.
And also, of course, to Deathstroke as well. So those, I think, were the highlights of this first episode, to be honest. The low points, I think, was how Trigon was dispatched.
Yeah. So you bring up a couple of good points, as always. Ian Glenn was introduced as Bruce Wayne in this episode, and also Isai Morales, our season 2 big bad, or at least one of them, was introduced as well. So just really quickly in general, guys, what were you? I know, Jesse, I know you were very happy with Ian Glenn as Bruce Wayne. And we definitely enjoyed Isai Morales. Any more thoughts about these two?
I've been on the record. I like them both. I thought they were good. I did want to go back to just one other point.
Sure.
We talked about this felt like we were sweeping out, kind of cleaning out the closet.
Right.
That's what you do if you change showrunners between the season. Like, okay, we've got a new voice, we got a new showrunner. All right, we need to get rid of everything that the previous administration was doing, the previous, creative team, so we can start fresh. This was the same showrunner. This was the same team. So I think that's a waste of, they could have done this better.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think so. And Nick, how about you? What were your initial impressions of Bruce Wayne and Deathstroke?
I was super, super happy with both of them because, I believe you and I, Charles, actually talked about this at some point when we took on the Connor episode, and the fact that we'd gotten an older Bruce Wayne, which I thought was actually really, really cool because of the fact that it was almost hearkening to the Dark Knight Returns, as it were. And I really loved that concept, and I thought that they would build on that concept of this older, more experienced, wiser Bruce Wayne, which I absolutely loved. And when it comes to Deathstroke, I think he was actually superior to the Deathstroke we got in the Arrowverse on the CW. So I was super, super happy because I said to myself, this is the Deathstroke that I have loved in the comics for so many years, and I'm so glad to see this kind of depiction on screen.
I totally agree.
Yeah, so definitely seconded by me as well, or thirded, I guess. This was definitely the Deathstroke I've been wanting to see ever since Marv Wolfman and George Perez as the new Teen Titans from back in the 80s when he was first introduced. Isai with that cold, emotionless detachment. A much stronger Deathstroke than Arrow's version. I mean, nothing against Manu Bennett. He was a perfectly fine Deathstroke. But if you're going to compare the two, I have to go with Isai Morales. I think he's far... His portrayal is just so dead on compared, to the comics, to what we expect from Deathstroke. He's intimidating, he's calculating, and the only time the character really stumbles, in my opinion, is in the Titan season 2 finale, when he just kind of shows up out of nowhere to confront Donna and the female Titans, and then a fight breaks out when Nightwing, Brenton Thwaites shows up finally in the Nightwing costume, and we'll talk about that, obviously. But yeah, Manu Bennett was great, and I know, Nick, you and I had talked about Ian Glenn's Bruce Wayne, and I mentioned to you the idea that wouldn't it be great if they did like an adaptation of The Dark Knight Returns with Ian Glenn's Bruce Wayne doing the physical performance with Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman from Batman the Animated Series, who's reprising the role of Bruce Wayne in the upcoming Crisis event for the CW that we're going to talk about. Yeah. How great it would be if Conroy provided the voice to Ian Glenn's Bruce Wayne. You'd have like the perfect older Batman, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Same here.
Yep. All right. Anything else about this episode before we move on?
Nope.
All right.
No.
Episode number 2, Rose. Written by Richard Hatem, directed by Nathan Hope. And this is where we kind of pick up a little bit of a time lag 3 months after Trigon's defeat, where Dick is training the younger new Titans in San Francisco. Rachel's powers are starting to act a little wonky, and Dick rescues a female metahuman on the run by the name of Rose Wilson, and who gets identified as Deathstroke's daughter. And we catch up with Hank and Dawn, Hawk and Dove, who have retired to Wyoming, but tensions kind of are raised a little bit when Hank discovers that Dawn's operating as Dove, And we catch up with Corey and Donna, who have apparently been crime fighting in a van in Chicago, where they capture the rogue metahuman Shimmer from the Fearsome Five in the DC Comics. And then Dawn, Hank, and Donna are forced to reunite with Dick Grayson when Dr. Arthur Light escapes from prison and begins targeting the Titans. So there's a lot going on here. We get the introduction of Rose, we get the introduction of Dr. Light, and we also get the brief introduction of Fede, played by Robbie Jones, Corey's fellow Tamaranian. So let's start with Nick this time. Nick, what were your thoughts on the new characters that we got in this episode, and how they kind of this being really the first full season 2 episode?
Okay, well, first off, let's just look at the title here. As you know, two fellow Whovians like yourselves, you see a title like this,
yes,
and you hope that you know a lot is riding on that, because you know how much that title means to Whovians, obviously, because of course it was the very first episode of New Who, and it was the bring back of Doctor Who. So when I saw that, I said, this better be good, because seeing how much I love that, I was really hoping that this Rose would be just as good. And I was very pleasantly surprised and happy about this episode. I think here was when we started to see, should we say, a departure from a little bit of the mediocrity that had been the first episode and the problems that had plagued the first episode. I really, really enjoyed this one. The fact that we are introduced to Rose, who is brilliantly played. The actress did a wonderful job of that. And of course, I think Titans is at its best when it handles the interpersonal relationships between the characters. The fact that you get to see what these people are like, when they're not donning their costumes, or, when they are just, as it were, regular people. And I really appreciated that. And I love the fact they kind of split everybody off and kind of you get the chance to kind of be with this almost the single characters for a while. I love that. I loved also the appearance of Shimmer as well. And of course, Fede. I mean, I'm a big Tamaranian fan in general. So it's very nice to see Fede. And just all in all, this was probably one of my favorite episodes of the season.
How about you, Jesse? What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I really liked this episode. I think we kind of got on a good roll. I liked the interaction between the teams. It was good to see Hank and Dawn moving there. We really liked, Corey having someone from her home world and that interaction between that. So, yeah, this was a really, really good episode. Set up things well. And I at this point, we're feeling pretty good about, okay, we've gotten rid of the Trigon stuff. Now we're going to set up this story that if you're a Titan comic fan, you're like, okay, this is, I'm seeing the parts of the, the famous storyline. This looks good.
The Judas contract.
Yeah. So I was really happy.
Yeah.
How about you, Charles?
Yeah, I was too. I love Chelsea Zhang as Rose Wilson. I think she's terrific in the role, wig and all. And, she definitely has Rose's attitude, especially you could see her definitely being Deathstroke's daughter. She definitely sold that. And, Dr. Light, I was a little disappointed by, we talked about this, that his armor was a bit cheesy and not quite what we expected from the comics. Fede was an interesting, concept that, this was our first Tamaranian other than Corey we were introduced to. And apparently, we find out later on, and we'll talk about that he has a history with Corey. But for right now, he just kind of kidnaps her, and we're just kind of wondering what's up with this. I love the idea of Corey and Donna fighting in crime in a van in Chicago.
I was just going to bring that up. Those were some of the best scenes of the season,
where Corey is just kind of tormenting Donna by constantly playing 70s disco music, and Donna just begging for at least a little bit of 80s once in a while. I love the tone seemed a bit more on track than we had seen all in just about all of season 1. it kind of felt like this was the first episode where the show is finally finding itself, and
Yes.
and we were starting to hope again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I agree.
that's my take anyway. All right. Anything else about this episode?
No.
All right. Moving on. Episode 3, Ghosts, written by Tom Pabst, directed by Kevin Chancherowin. And this is the episode where Donna, Hank, and Dawn show back up at Titan's Tower, who get notified by Dick, hey, Deathstroke. Remember Deathstroke, the guy that, caused us to break up in the first place? Well, he's back in the city pursuing Rose. And Rose reveals to Dick that she's attempting to assassinate Deathstroke because he killed her brother Jericho. Which obviously we know now that, hey, Dick knows a little bit more about that than he's telling. And we find that Deathstroke is working together with Dr. Light on his plans to lure the heroes, separate the weaker members from the group. And, that we have Jason getting Gar to go look for him on their own, which of course goes sideways. And Jason defeats Dr. Light, but then gets ambushed by Deathstroke, leading to a great cliffhanger. And we kind of find out Fide's deal with Corey, that apparently her sister Blackfire, who's mentioned for the first time here, orders her to return to Tamran to become queen. And I guess, let's see what else. Corey ends up trapping Fide in her ship, and Corey gets a call from Rachel encouraging her to return to her friends. So, Jesse, let's go with you. What's your thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, I really like this episode. We kind of get the return of the Titans. We see some nice banter between the team. We get our first just image of Garth. We don't get much,
right?
But we do get to see him. So this was, at this point, we're feeling pretty good about this season. Like,
right.
Hey, they're moving really well. So I like the idea that the team is starting to settle in. They feel like they're back at home. They know where their rooms are, and we talk about that. So I like that. I was pretty happy with this episode.
And Nick, how about you?
Well, the first thing, Charles, you mentioned Dr. Light's armor being a little bit campy and cheesy. I will definitely agree with you on that. But what I will say is, if they ever do a live-action version of Justice League Identity Crisis, yes, I want Michael Mosley to play Arthur Light, because
you really liked him in the role.
Yes, because loving that story so much, being one of my favorite Justice League stories, he did encapsulate a lot of what Dr. Light is there, apart from the lecherous side of him.
Right.
But that cruelty and that sadism was very much, Michael played it really, really well in that sense. And I said to myself, this is a Dr. Light straight from Identity Crisis, and I absolutely love that. And as you guys were saying, just seeing the team getting together and doing things, and it was wonderful, because, as I said, this is where we start to see that everything gelling well, the team working together, the season working together. We're super, super hyped about it all, and I just wanted to see more. And of course, as soon as Blackfire was mentioned, I was super excited, because I said to myself, wow, they really are. They've got a lot of guts to throw in so many different characters at us. So I was happy, but I was concerned at the same time, because I said to myself, they're working with a lot of things here. I hope they can juggle them all. And with, at least so far with this episode, it did seem that way. And I absolutely loved it from start to finish.
Yeah, Jesse and I kind of expressed that concern once they mentioned Blackfire. I believe, if I recall correctly, Jesse, feel free to correct me.
Yeah, I believe you're right.
That, we were wondering, look, they've got a lot on their plate. They're doing the Judas Contract storyline. They're introducing characters. We haven't met Superboy yet. And so do they really want to be throwing in the Blackfire saga on top of that? And thankfully, as it turned out, they just kind of teased it throughout the season. They didn't really dwell on it much. It wasn't obtrusive. So I definitely appreciated that, because, hey, they've got plenty to talk about. Let's focus on what you have. Don't get greedy. Save that for season 3 if you get it. And sure enough, that's what they're doing, it looks like.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Anything else about this episode?
No.
All right. Moving on. This is a big one. Episode 4, Aqualad. This was written by Jamie Gorenberg, directed by Glenn Winter, who tends to direct the rather big special effects episodes of the CW Arrowverse, among others. And this is a big one. So we've got, we kind of get, we pick up 5 years before the present, where an assignment sends Deathstroke to San Francisco, where Jericho and his mother Adeline are hiding. So we kind of get a little introduction to Jericho and Adeline. Assisted by their new member Garth, aka Aqualad. The original Titans captured Dr. Light. Garth and Donna start harboring romantic feelings for one another. But Donna starts off resisting Garth's advances because she says the Amazons are requiring her to return to Themyscira, when actually she's just being real skittish about the whole thing. One thing leads to another, though. They end up back into Garth's room and have sex. Hooray. We actually get to see Titans having sex again. Not since Dick and Corey, right, in season 1.
Yes.
Garth learns from Dick that Donna will be leaving immediately, and then when Garth confronts Donna at the airport to persuade her to stay, he gets shot and killed by Deathstroke.
Dope. Yes.
And at this point, Donna realizes that she was indeed in love with Aqualad, and the surviving members of the team, at least at this point, we think that they're wondering if Aqualad was the target. Although Jesse and I had expressed our suspicions that he wasn't the target.
Right.
We were thinking maybe Donna was the target for some reason, but it turned out something else. Right. And the surviving members of the team, they identified Deathstroke as Garth's killer, and they dedicate themselves to hunting him down. And then we see Dick confronting Jericho in a record store to kind of cozy up to him, unaware that Jericho being unaware that Dick wants revenge against his father. So we get the introduction of Jericho and Adeline. So let's start with you, Nick, on this one. So what was your take on Jericho, one of the Titans from the comics, and especially Aqualad, who only appears in this one episode so far, at least in flashback form?
I really, really enjoyed this episode. And interesting, the fact that it was written by somebody whose main work was on Desperate Housewives and done and shows like Dharma and Greg. But it may be that Jamie Gorenberg carried this idea of, once again, interpersonal relationships from those shows into this episode. First off, when it came to Drew Van Acker as Garth/Aqualad, I thought he was a perfect fit. And funnily enough, whenever I was watching him, I was trying to imagine him at Jason Momoa's side, as Aquaman and Aqualad. And I said, yeah, they could work together. And I really, really enjoyed that. And I thought that the relationship between Donna and Garth was great. At the same time, I was a little bit on edge. They're saying, when are you guys going to do it already? Because it's like...
Just get it on. It's coming. And sure enough,
absolutely, yes.
So that... in inverted commas, irritated me a little bit, but I was like, okay, they just want to keep on, kind of teasing us that they're eventually going to be sleeping together or have, should we say, a romantic relationship. And so I really enjoyed that. And of course, seeing Jericho for the first time and loving the Judas Contract, that was a huge thing for me as well. And as we will see with the progression of the series, Jericho was really, really well handled, I feel, at least for the most part. And I think also maybe this episode suffered from Game of Thrones-itis because of the fact that you're introduced to a character and boom, they're dead. So It might have been that. It was a very strong and poignant death, and obviously it gave Donna and the rest of the team that resolution and that desire to have a mission, as it were. So narratively, it makes sense. It's a shame because I would have liked to have seen more of Aqualad, but I understand where Jamie Gorenberg was going with this.
Yeah, I'm going to step in and say the same thing. This, if I remember correctly, we both ranked this episode really high.
Yes, we did.
There is a lot to like. We get to see a pre-death Titans. We get to see them back and forth. We get to see Dawn and Dick together as a really cool couple. Hank is just there as a friend. We love. I loved Garth. I loved seeing that. I loved him and Donna's. They're flirting back and forth. Everything was just perfect in this episode, and I agree with you, Nick. I would have liked to had more time with Garth as Aqualad, but I understand what they were trying to do. But if I had a way, I would have liked to had a couple of episodes of the classic Titans doing a few other, battles or fights and more time together. Drew Van Acker was in a very little known Tower Prep. I think I talked about that when we did before.
Yes.
And it's one of, I really loved that Cartoon Network live action series. And I think it's a shame that we don't get to see more of him. But I think because how good he was at helped sell us being very upset at his death.
Yeah, because I think we talked about this, Jesse, was that they had to do a lot in this episode. They had to introduce Aqualad, give a little backstory, develop that relationship between him and Donna, bring them together, and then make you care about him, to make you feel that once he gets killed off. On top of everything else, on top of introducing Jericho, on top of introducing Adeline. And so there was a lot going on in this episode. And it was very skillfully done that it worked so well. And even though, Drew Van Acker, he wouldn't have been my first choice for Aqualad, primarily because he doesn't have black hair like Aqualad in the comics. But I thought he did a great job. He was very likable. You could kind of see. He does kind of he's essentially, like Nick said, he's essentially like the Jason Momoa version of Aqualad. He's got a little bit of a beard going, the longer hair. And so you could definitely kind of see him working with Momoa's Aquaman in that regard. But I thought he had great chemistry with Connor Leslie. And of course, again, like Jesse, I'm sure would back me up on this. Anytime you have a Connor Leslie spotlight episode as Wonder Girl, that means the show Titans is a lot better with her in it more
absolutely.
often. So the more Donna, the better as far as Titans is concerned for me anyway. My wife Lori had a little bit of a problem with the relationship because as she points out, like Donna was never involved with Aqualad. They never had anything going on in the comics. There was zero interest there. But she went along with it, and it could at least for the premise of the show, she accepted it, and they killed off Aqualad right away, so it wasn't that big of a deal for her.
Yeah, and I was okay with them changing some of the continuity,
right?
To make it its unique place, because we wouldn't have had an impact with. If a Terry character had come in place.
Yeah.
They've already established that.
We don't need Terry Long at all.
No. Dick and Donna are brother and sister, by far, a loving sibling relationship. So I thought this was really nice the way this worked out. It was really good. So I think this would be definitely one of the highlights of the season.
Yeah, and another highlight for me was Chella Man as Jericho. As one of the things I think I've talked about during this past season, I have a deaf nephew who signed, so I was really looking forward to Jericho making his debut. And, obviously Jericho's not deaf, he's mute, so there's a little bit of a difference, but they do have a deaf actor playing Jericho. And I thought Chella Man was very likable, and we kind of rooted for them. Like, you can't betray this guy; he's too nice. And it kind of makes what Dick and the other original Titans were doing a little underhanded and a little unpleasant, shall we say. All right. So any other thoughts, guys, about this episode?
No.
All right.
The only thing I'd throw in
yes.
is you understand why they're being underhanded.
Yes.
You know, the pain of losing this team member. Now, we'll later go back and complain, at least I will, that retroactively the team's like, oh, I can't believe you did that to Jericho. And we're like, wait a minute, we were all holding hands. This was the plan. But
yes.
We'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, it's everybody dumps on Dick Grayson and blames him for it. But it's like, we kind of made this pact together, as I recall. You know, and we obviously now have it on video. So, yeah, we've got proof. All right, moving on. Episode 5, Deathstroke, in the latest of our uninteresting episode titles. Written by new writer Bianca Sams and directed by Nick Gomez. And in this one, right after we kind of pick up, you know, with a cliffhanger of, hey, remember Jason? He was kidnapped by Deathstroke. Well, following that abduction, Deathstroke finally has enough of Dr. Light, who's annoying as all get out, kills him. So goodbye, Dr. Light. We hardly knew ye. Tells the heroes that he'll release Jason in exchange for Rose, not knowing, of course, that Deathstroke and Rose are working together, as we find out later in the season. The original Titans catch Corey up when she finally shows up on what's been going on. And Gar, Rachel, and Rose eavesdrop on their conversations. And this is where we kind of get our first look at the kind of generational split with the Titans, the original Titans, and then the newer Titans, the new Titans, shall we say? You know, Gar, Rachel, and Rose, and Corey. So, kind of realizing that the original Titans have a lot of baggage, and they're keeping secrets from them. They're talking, you know, and there seems to be this divide in the group, and we have more of Rachel's unstable powers, and Dick telling his teammates that they plan to ambush Deathstroke under the guise of making the exchange. But Dick ends up going completely off the map, off the grid on this one, and decides to privately offer his life for Jason because, hey, he feels guilty over what happened with Jericho. And so he's willing to let Deathstroke kill him in exchange, as long as he leaves everybody else alone. And this is where we get a great cliffhanger with Jason bound to a scaffold rigged with explosives. And Corey and Dick have a great little three-way fight between those two and Deathstroke. But, of course, Deathstroke activates the explosives, sending Jason falling from the skyscraper. Dun, dun, dun. So there's a lot there. Jesse, let's start with you. What do you think about this one?
So I remember really liking the fight. I thought this was a good setup. The cliffhanger was well done. This is where we did say, because we knew the title in advance, that they will ignore this episode and we will spend the whole next episode talking about Connor. And the only way I'm going to be happy is at the end of the episode, Connor flies up and saves Jason.
Yes,
but
you
we
did.
know that's not going to happen. And then it did happen. I thought this was another good episode. We've got Rachel's dark power. I was upset she wasn't talking to someone about this, but I kind of get that. At this point, we're rolling along pretty well.
Yes, we are. Yeah, things are moving. The pace is great. The season seems to be moving forward with an agenda. The flashbacks are getting a little frustrating, especially with the cliffhangers. But otherwise, yeah, things are clicking pretty good. Nick, how about you? What are your thoughts on this one?
I would definitely echo Jesse's thoughts and your thoughts, I believe, too, Charles. When I think that, yes, here we were, the team was very tight. They were doing things well. The fights were very well choreographed. The pace of the episode in general was just stellar. I feel, we were going, places constantly. So, they always had the viewer's attention. And of course, we have the cliffhanger at the end, which you and I talked about this in the Connor episode as well, which was a little bit reminiscent, somewhat, shall we say, to Death in the Family, to Batman Death in the Family, where you have a Robin at the mercy of a villain,
right.
And it seems like they're not going to make it. Is it? Will he make it? Won't he make it? And I believe DC actually teased that when this episode aired. And outside of that,
I did point out though there was no crowbar involved.
Yeah, exactly. No crowbar this time. They decided to up the ante with explosives, so that was a good one. Exactly. But I thought it was all round just a great episode. Really, really fun. Really enjoyed it, and definitely had me wanting more and looking forward to more episodes from this season.
Yep. So things are moving along nicely. So that leads us right into episode 6, Connor. Written by Richard Atem, directed by Alex Kalimnios. And this is our big Superboy debut. Joshua Orpin makes his debut, and I think it's a very strong debut as Superboy, although he's not quite Superboy yet. We are introduced to him in Metropolis, where Subject 13 escapes from Cadmus Labs with Crypto. Yes, we got Crypto, and that was very cool. He essentially starts wandering around Metropolis and ends up taking a bus to Lionel Luthor's Kansas home, thinking it's the Kents, but it's actually Lionel's home. And because he doesn't realize that, hey, well, I've got half of Lex Luthor's memories inside me, not just Superman's, being a Superman clone. We're introduced to Mercy Graves, Nellie Gumede, who does a stellar job, I think, as Mercy in this season, accompanied by Eve Watson, Genevieve Angelson, who I thought was phenomenal, and I really would have loved to have seen more of her, especially in this Titan Season 2 finale, which we'll talk about. But I thought she should have been the one that talked Superboy down from his mind control on that one. And we also had Connor confronting Eve. Eve kind of catching Connor up on what Cadmus has been up to, taking him around on other facilities to help better understand himself. And she warns him that he needs to flee, but she also warns that he needs to not draw attention to himself by using his powers. Connor ends up, of course, disobeying her because when he sees Jason falling from that scaffolding from the skyscraper and saves him, only to end up getting shot by kryptonite bullets from Mercy Graves and her team. And poor Crypto gets taken into custody with a kryptonite collar, and I was very upset about that. So lots going on in this one. Nick, what's your take on our Superboy?
Well, as you know, I had the privilege of discussing this episode with you in full, Charles, and I believe that both of us were very happy with this episode. I mean, so much is going on in this between the introductions that we get of Peter McNeil, who does a great job of Lionel Luthor, definitely a very different Lionel Luthor from the one that we got, for example, in Smallville.
From John Glover, yeah.
Exactly, because and the concept of the fact that the Luthors, because as I mentioned in the Connor episode, we were used to the Luthors being a very affable, very wealthy family, and you see this man in more, should we say, modest surroundings compared to what you think of a Luthor, as it were. And so I thought that was very interesting, just the way Peter played him as this kind of retired scientist who's kind of lost his vision, who definitely has a drinking problem and such. And I thought that was brilliant. Not to mention the relationship between Eve and Connor, which was wonderful and which made me so mad that we didn't get anything more from that as the season progressed, because it seemed at a certain point that the season forgot about Genevieve Angelson at one point, and we kind of just sort of lost her, which was a great shame, because she did a wonderful job as Eve Watson. That relationship, I think, was one of the most beautiful and well done relationships in this series. And hey, who doesn't love Crypto? As we mentioned, whoever trained that dog did a wonderful job, because that dog is a stellar actor as well.
Definitely. Jesse, how about you?
Yeah, I wasn't. I was traveling, so I didn't get to be on the show to talk about this one. There is nothing not to love in this episode, even though it takes us from our main storyline. It's so well done. I can't complain. that we kind of take a side trip because it's such a great side trip. I love everything about the characters. I love the evilness of, Mercy. I love Eve's, coming on her own. Connor was just naive enough. I agree with you guys on Crypto. It is just
how can you not love Crypto?
Yeah, just a great take on what's going on, and and I do agree that Joshua Orpin,
yep,
great Superboy. Absolutely. I agree with you guys. I wished Eve had come back later in the season. And I agree. The great Peter McNeil playing Lionel Lucher, he was perfect. That you would be this. He was a someone who's poor, and that Lex would want to distance from. So yeah, great stuff.
All right. Yeah, I totally agree. And, obviously Jesse and I are huge Superman fans. So we were very geeking hard about this episode, especially, the idea of Crypto and using his powers and whatnot. We were very happy. And Orphan was great. Pretty much a dead-on take on Jeff Johns' version of Connor Kent, Superboy, from his run of Teen Titans, like the 2003 era. And I was very happy. I was very satisfied with that. All right. So let's move on. Episode 7, Bruce Wayne. And more boring episode titles. Written by Brian Edward Hill, who's writing a lot of current DC comics these days. Directed by Akiva Goldsman. And I believe I mentioned this to you, Jesse, that I definitely prefer Akiva Goldsman as a director to a writer.
I think you did. I just loved this episode. I love that in Dick's mind, his father figure is talking to him, that's giving him this feedback. He's fighting all the different images and he has. It's really well done as, Dick's going through his processes of what he has to do. And I've been a fan, from the beginning. I thought Ian Glenn was this great, Batman. I just really like him as Bruce Wayne. And so at this point, you and I are feeling, man, this season is rolling on. They are leaving season 1 in the dirt.
Right.
Oh, we have just got, man,
this show is finally
we're in for
clicking.
a great, yes.
Absolutely,
yes.
It was it was ecstatic. Nick, how about you?
I thought once again, yes, just like Jesse said, it was very interesting this time around. We had a hallucination version of Bruce Wayne compared to, say, the real thing, and I guess to make this episode in general, dealt with this theme of, shall we say, mental issues and psychological issues, because on one hand we have Dick being plagued with these hallucinations of Bruce Wayne. On the other, we have Jason Todd contemplating suicide. So, it was a big, should we say, it dealt with a lot of psychological issues. It was a very psychological episode. And me being a huge fan of the psychological realm, I just ate this episode up for that reason, because of the way they tried to show the issues that we even go through as regular people on a day-to-day basis, where in our heads we have these conversations with ourselves, and they decide to, as it were, personify them by giving Dick, in this case, a Bruce Wayne to talk to, as it were, and on the other hand, to handle such a difficult issue like suicide and suicidal tendencies, and it was so well handled without being, as it were, pandering in any way,
or preaching,
without,
yeah.
Exactly, because of course it's a very, very it's a very difficult issue to tackle, and it can go horribly wrong if you do it the wrong way. And so I thought it was absolutely a beautiful episode, and yes, indeed, eat more Ian Glenn, please, for sure.
Yeah, Ian Glenn was obviously the star of this episode. He being a hallucination, he's not, like Jesse said, he's not strictly Bruce Wayne in this story. He's Dick's idea of Bruce Wayne. how his, going through the Dick Grayson filters, so to speak. And so consequently, he gets to play Bruce a little differently. And Bruce gets to go do wacky things. Like there's a great moment where he jumps on stage at this burlesque club and starts doing the Batusi from the 1960s Batman TV show, which Jesse and I, being older than dirt, were geeking out really hard about.
Yes, we were.
Just how cool that was to kind of give Adam West's Batman a check in this one. Lots of great moments. And again, it was so great to kind of see Bruce and Dick talking to kind of get the, that little insight, and get a little better understanding of how Dick views Bruce. The downside, though, this is the first episode where I was seriously questioning Dick's mental illness, or Dick's mental health, really. Because, for one thing, his guilt is pressing on him so much now it's causing hallucinations. And at this point, I'm going, dude, talk to somebody. Find a therapist. What are you doing? You're going off, you're doing all this stuff, and this isn't normal. You should not be experiencing hallucinations. I'm sorry. And if you are, you need to talk to somebody about that before something serious happens. And then meanwhile, yeah, you've got, the whole thing with, what is it here? We've got, Jason contemplating suicide over his trauma, over almost being killed. And, Eve shows up at the tower after freeing Crypto, where she finds Connor dying from kryptonite poisoning, and then Eve informs Corey that Connor can only be saved using solar radiation. So there was this great scene where Corey, with Raven's help, Rachel's help, they kind of create this little solar flare within Titan's tower. Why they didn't take him outside to do this, I have no idea, because they scorched the hell out of that floor. But okay, they saved the day, and even though Connor ends up going back in a coma afterwards. So great episode, fun little one, fun little diversion. But this one, we were a little concerned because it wasn't really driving the story. I think you kind of accused this one of being a little bit of filler, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jesse.
It was fun filler, but yes, we absolutely do feel that way.
All right. Moving on. Episode 8, Jericho. Written by Kate McCarthy, directed by Toa Frazier. And in this one, we get the story of the Titans essentially manipulating Jericho. They invite him to drink some beers on the beach with them, and in order to pump him for information about Deathstroke. They do like the kid, so it's not. And this is where they kind of start to feel a little conflicted because of Hank and Dawn especially are like, this kid's great. Why are we doing this to him? But Dick is focused on getting Deathstroke, and Donna definitely wants Deathstroke because of wanting her vengeance for Aqualad.
Absolutely.
So they press forward with this. And so they recruit Jericho into the team. At least they start to. They actually opened up though, with Dawn, under Dawn's advice. So Dick finally relents and opens up to Jericho, and Deathstroke kind of learns that of the Titans' contact with Jericho after killing Jillian, and severely injures Donna as a way for warning to stay away from his son. So Dick responds by confronting Deathstroke and prompting a fight that ends in Deathstroke's favor. But before Deathstroke can kill Dick, however, Deathstroke jumps in front of his father's blade and gets stabbed, and his body dies. And as we find out, it's just his body. And of course, this is what leads to the Titans breaking up originally. So let's see, what did we leave out? Yeah. So Nick, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, we were talking a little bit about filler episodes and the fact that they tend to do a lot of back and forth between what happened to set up Jericho and things of this nature. But in this case, you had to do this, especially, I believe, the end of episode 7 ended with Dick saying, "I killed his son."
Right.
And everybody was like, kind of, how did he kill his son? I want to know how he killed his son. So obviously this episode answered that question. And it was a very strong, the answer was a very strong one indeed. You have to definitely hand it to the way Jericho was portrayed. It was absolutely brilliant. You love this guy so much. And just like in the Connor episode, thank God they didn't keep the secret from him for ages, as writers are wont to do in other TV series, where the guy never knows until the end, and everybody's like, oh, it's a whole big deal, and it's crazy. And this was handled very well. That Dick comes out, almost not immediately, but shortly after, and explains to Jericho what's going on. And surprise, surprise, Jericho is cool with it. He doesn't. It's not like, you lied to me for so many months, and now you're telling me, etc. So I thought that was very well handled, and people should definitely take notes from that. The fight was wonderful, and of course, it was very heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching when Jericho's body dies, because unbeknownst to us, he does survive, but the viewer's like, wow, the kid just got killed like that, and it just really left you kind of totally gutted. And of course, this leads to the Titans disbanding. So another great episode for sure.
And Jesse, how about you?
Yeah, I think this was good. It's certainly, I had a little bit of problem, and this is where we go into Monday morning quarterbacking. I think I told the story in the original discussion. Very early in Lynn and I's marriage, we made an agreement that we would not go back and ever say, well, I didn't think this was a good idea. We established that if we're making a decision, and if you disagree with the decision, speak now or do not try to second guess us, because the time to say that was then. And I felt that same way about the Titans. After the fact, when everything goes poorly, well, don't know if we should use Jericho the way we did. And we're like, okay, we were all in agreement with this. Now then you want to change your mind because you've seen the results. That was my only nitpick of the episode. I thought this was powerful. I thought it was well done. And then, we could say, no, I understand why Dick thinks he should feel guilty about killing Jericho, but he did not cause the death.
Yeah. That was my issue with that as well, is that we finally got to see the death scene, and we got to see how the events played out. And after watching that, we're left going, wait, everybody's blaming Dick for Jericho's death, but he doesn't deserve it. Even Dick blames himself for this, but it's not his fault. Why is he torturing himself like this? We were just left stunned about why everyone feels this way.
Yes,
it was horrible that Jericho died, but Deathstroke's the one that killed him.
Yeah,
and or at least at the time we thought he was dead. And we were a little bummed. I know a lot of people who obviously weren't familiar with the comics, didn't quite understand his powers, were just stunned. They're like, why did you kill off this great character Jericho? And then here I'm going, well, he's probably not dead. He probably jumped. You
did say that from the beginning.
That was one of my theories.
You never did. Yes,
that Jericho was still alive out there. And thankfully I was proven right on that one, because I would have been bummed had Jericho stayed dead in that regard, because I thought he was a great character, still do, and I'm glad that he's not out of the picture for sure. Although I was a little bummed about that they killed Jillian in this story, because I find her very intriguing, and I want to know more about Jillian's relationship with the Amazons, and especially Donna. So maybe we could find out more in a flashback, because God knows Titans loves its flashbacks.
They do love their flashbacks, yes.
So maybe in season 3 we'll get more. But if we don't, it was just a little. It seemed like a little bit of a letdown in that regard. But don't know why the Titans are blaming Dick for that. All right, moving on. Episode 9, Atonement, where we finally get an episode title not named after one of the characters. Hooray.
Mhm.
Written by Jeffrey David Thomas, directed by Boris Mojsovsky. Excuse me. And in this one, we get Dick finally coming clean about Jericho's death to the team. And instead of going, okay, that happened. We understand what happened now. We're not happy, but okay, we're here for you. This had to be a horrible secret you were keeping. No, they're just like, okay, that's it. We're out of here. We're done. Bye. And everybody walks out one by one. Some for just being pissed off. Some are just a little, I need to get away right now for whatever reason. And the only one left behind is Gar. So Dick leaves Gar in charge of Titan's Tower. And Gar leaves him to watch over Connor, who's still recovering. And so Gar decides, after Connor finally wakes up, Gar takes him out for a little field trip, and which goes horribly, horribly wrong. So Jesse, what are your thoughts on this one?
One day,
Yes.
which is today, where we discuss where season 2 on the Titans
went horribly wrong.
Went horribly wrong. When got off the trail.
Went off the rails.
We will point to this episode and say, yes, this is where it happened.
See episode 9.
There is just almost nothing good about the episode. And just everyone being unhappy, the blaming each other. Yes, there are individual moments. Gar, like, hey, I'm going to be this guy. And, within 3 days, he's bored. There just is too much, just too much ugliness in this. And I just was really, really unhappy. And especially with the ending where, Dick gives himself up.
Yeah. Yeah, that was just very frustrating, I think. Nick, how about you?
Yeah.
Excuse me. I will certainly agree with Jesse as well. As in, if you wanted to give us a mood killer, mission accomplished, because they did everything. I think in this case, the writer Jeffrey David Thomas did everything in his power to depress us. And I think, because if anything had to go wrong, it had to go wrong. Obviously between Hank and Dawn breaking up, Dick, of course, being super depressed himself and allowing himself to be arrested. Corey killing Faday. Well, it's not really her fault.
It was forced. She was kind of forced to. Yeah.
Exactly, because Blackfire was possessing her body. So there was that as well. And the unfortunate thing was it started on such almost a fun note, because you kind of almost see what happens when Gar is alone in the tower.
Yeah.
And he's trying to pass the time, and as Jesse was saying, after he just gets bored, he's like, oh, what am I going to do now? Let's see what I can do. And see, Satan finds work for idle hands, as they say.
Yes, indeed. Well said.
And that's why we get, of course, Gar taking Connor out in public and all that craziness ensuing. So yes, all in all, not a particularly good episode. And I think here was where shall we say, using the comparison of the hockey season of the Canadians, this is when the slump began and the cracks were starting to show. And I wasn't particularly happy with this episode. I was like, I really, really hope they redeem themselves in episode 10.
Yeah, this is definitely where we started feeling very skeptical about how the season was going to turn out and the direction of the show. I totally agree. All right. I hope everybody's okay there. All right.
Yes.
So let's move on. Episode 10, Fallen. Also written once again by Jamie Gorenberg, directed by Kevin Sullivan. And this is our big Dick Grayson in prison episode, a.k.a. Cool Hand Dick episode. So while incarcerated at the Kane County Correctional Facility, Dick meets a couple of immigrants and helps them get back to Corto Maltese, only to end up thrown into solitary as a result?
So we thought at the time, well, we can't have a worse episode. Surprise! Yes, you can.
Guess what? We can.
Yeah, and I remember you and I both. I was more Captain Grumpy, though you were
Yes,
not
you were.
arguing too much against me.
I understood being Captain Grumpy, yes.
Because there is no logic, and I will. It was bad storytelling. How he would be in prison that quickly? What was his plan? How would they could move this forward? How would not the other Titans find out about it? How would Bruce let that happen? There is just nothing logical about this episode and accomplishes nothing.
And that's that's the nice version.
That is the nice version. Yeah.
If you want to hear the full unexpurgated version, check out our Fallen review. All right, yes. Nick, how about you?
Well, I will agree once again. We didn't get a particularly good episode here. Jamie Gorenberg did not do a particularly good job in this one compared to what she had done previously with Aqualad,
right.
Which was a bit of a shame because she had started off with a very strong episode. I agree. There were too many plot holes in this episode, but it seems that DC in general maybe likes to see their characters in prison. Because, I loved it when in the comics when Bruce Wayne went to prison, that was well written. Even when Arrow went to prison, that was okay. When Oliver Queen was in prison, it was okay, but it wasn't great. And here, of course, they had to have Dick go to prison. So they had to show us that. And I mean, what was the point of the whole immigrant thing and wanting to help the immigrants? Either they were trying to make a political statement, I don't know, or they just need to find a reason, an excuse for the Nightwing myth. And so for Dick to come up with the concept of but it was very kind of heavy-handed and very, very strange because okay, yeah, we get it. He sees the drawing or the silhouette of a bird on the wall and it's like, okay, that's going to be my symbol. So yeah. You could have done that a little bit better. Other than that, I was very happy with seeing Mercy Graves again, who's one of the saving graces of this season. That she has been splendid throughout. I really enjoyed her. Outside of that, this episode was not one of the good ones. It was, should we say, the second consecutive defeat for the Titans on this season.
Yeah, and especially with that little side trip with Rachel ending up with a bunch of runaways. That ultimately led to nowhere. I don't know what the whole purpose of that was, apart from just give Rachel something to do. All right, episode 11, EL_O. And this is written by Bianca Sams, once again directed by Millicent Shelton. And this is the episode where Dick realizes, hey, Jericho's still alive in Deathstroke's body, which is something I've been screaming for the past 3 episodes. And Corey, Rachel, Donna, and Dawn are lured to the Elko Diner in Nevada by what they believe is Bruce Wayne in an attempt to reunite the team. So, Nick, let's start with you on this one. What were your thoughts on this one?
Okay, this episode was slightly better because we finally, Dick finally woke up and realized, oh, Jericho's alive. It's like,
what am I doing congrats. Here?
Yeah, pat yourself on the back for that one, buddy. But so that was a little bit irritating. But other than that, I thought it seeing the Titans finally come back together and this whole idea of this mysterious Elko diner and them meeting up together and such, I enjoyed that part of the story of the episode, as it were. And but the fact is, what really got me is everybody's trying to get a hold of Dick. His phone's off. He keeps going to voice message. Put 2 and 2 together, people, and they finally did.
Right.
Like, oh, maybe something's happened to the guy. Let's maybe watch the news or find out if something's happened to him. So that was a little bit frustrating. But I'm glad they finally got Rachel and Corey to go and rescue him, which was good. But other than that, they were trying to once again clean up the mess from the previous 2 episodes, I felt.
Yeah, they go there and Dick's gone. So we broke into prison for nothing. All right, Jesse, how about you?
Yeah, I was a little bit happier with this. I was glad to see Dick work through his illness. They kind of talk about he's delirious a little bit because he's got some kind of fever.
Yeah.
He works through his subconscious is talking to him. You're missing something. You're missing something, and he goes through this now. So I was happy. I was happier. I really, really enjoyed the going to the diner. And we were able to give ELO puns on the podcast. Yes, if we hit the ditch, this is where we started going back up.
Yeah. I love personally. I loved the idea of finally getting to see the female Titans in the scene together.
Yes.
It was great to see that a little bit. Although you've had Bruce Wayne, or at least Wayne-splaining, essentially,
which was a great line.
But it was still good to see. And Rose is growing closer to Jason, and
yes,
and then poor Gar gets subjected to Mercy's experiments. So not looking good for Gar at this point.
No, it didn't.
All right. Moving on, our penultimate episode. I love saying that word. Faux Hawk, written by Tom Pabst once again. Directed by Larnell Stovall. This is where Gar essentially goes a little bit off the rails. This is the first time he unleashes his powers at the coffee bar, and basically mauls a bunch of people. And Donna and Dawn, they come up, basically try to stop Cadmus and when they find out about Gar and Connor's conditioning, and Rose admitting to Jason that she's been helping Deathstroke, and we got a lot of her backstory in this one. This is a big Rose episode. So Jesse, what's your take on this one?
So this gave us the great scenes with Stewart and the fruitcake discussion.
Right.
So I will love this episode for at least that part of the episode. There is issues. I hate what they did to Garfield. I don't like that. I don't think we needed the Hawk selling his suit for drugs.
Right.
And yes, we get it. Hawk is in a bad place. Okay, we get it. But this is, I at this point, I'm feeling a little bit better about possibly the season. Let's see if they're going to stick the landing. I want to hear what you said, DJ. Come on, Mr. Nick.
When it comes to Faux Hawk, once again, I think this was a half and half episode, because I'm thinking to myself, why are you changing the role of the Beast Boy is supposed to have in the series? I mean, he's supposed to be the lighthearted guy, the good guy, the one who's almost he tries to rally everybody together, as it were.
Yeah,
and
yes. He's the heart of the team.
Exactly. Yes. And you turn that all around its head, and you use a trope that's been done so many times. I don't think we needed it necessarily, which was, should we say, the concept of mind control, as it were. And if you're going to do mind control, do it well, and do it to where it actually means something and where it has long-lasting effects, because they did this, and then they kind of, they threw it away very quickly as well. So I was not happy with that at all. Also because we needed some light in this very dark tunnel, and Gar was definitely represented that. And also, as you were saying, Jesse, the concept of, yes, we know that Hank is in a rough place and he's doing drugs and stuff, but do you have to go all the way of doing the Faux Hawk concept and the guy who buys his suit and he's doing selfies and, taking videos of himself playing Hawk? I thought that was, to be honest, I thought that was garbage, and we could have done without that. Yes. So I wasn't particularly happy with this episode, but it did have its good points. Like, for example, once again, the way Rose was used. So I was saddened to see this kind of caused a huge rift with Jason, who kind of disappears for the rest of the season.
Yeah, because obviously those two break up, and it's very discouraging because apparently Rose was the only really good thing in Jason's life apart from being Robin, of course.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Final episode, season finale, Nightwing. So at long last, we get to see Brenton Thwaites in the Nightwing costume. This one's written by Richard Atem and showrunner Greg Walker, directed by Carol Banker. But this is what we've been all building up to. Hopefully, everything all comes together. But as Jesse and I had talked, it doesn't quite do that so much. So, Jesse, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on this one?
We just talked about this, and
right.
I just think this is. I mean, it was a decent finale, but it was not. They set themselves up to do things poorly. We should have had. We didn't need to set up next season. We didn't need the Candace storyline. I mean, we complained last time, and I stand by it. You shouldn't be able to kill Deathstroke that easy.
Right.
And if you're going to try to say he's not dead, then okay, but why act like he's dead? I mean, you're not even pretending. You aren't going, look, and there his body's gone. We spent a lot of time complaining about how they did this, and I just was a lot of good. I love seeing Dick in the Nightwing costume, though we didn't ever hear him say Nightwing, which we wanted to hear.
Right.
I'm a Titan fan. I want to hear him say that my code name is going to be Nightwing. We didn't get that. We didn't get the explanation of why aren't they looking for him for breaking out of prison.
There's no consequences for any of the legal troubles that the Titans are going through. Nothing for Superboy, nothing for Gar, nothing for Dick.
I mean, Rachel talks to him, and Garfield just forgets the fact that he had innocent blood. He's had the taste of innocent blood on his teeth. I think they were going, look at our shiny Nightwing costume. Isn't this cool? And then don't look behind the story behind the curtain. Let's just move forward.
Yep. Nick, how about you? I know you've got a few thoughts on this one.
Yes, indeed. You and I had a curious, exchange about this, a brief exchange on Facebook about this, Charles.
And I told you, save it for the podcast. Save it for the podcast.
I know I was doing my best to hold back, but sometimes you just can't, And I'm usually the optimistic one.
You are.
When it comes to shows, movies, etc., I always try to find the redeeming qualities. But here there were very few redeeming qualities, even for somebody as optimistic as me who does his best to love this stuff, because, the three of us love the source material and we want these people to succeed and it to be a good show. But, as I was mentioning, take great villains, chuck them in the garbage. You did it with Trigon, you did it with Deathstroke, and then you had to come up with this whole thing of now they're mind controlled. You have to get over the mind control. And they got over it very, very quickly. And it seemed like a very rushed finale to me. Yes, it was great to see Dick become Nightwing, but that was just a very, very brief thing. And let's talk about Donna Troy's death, which was so cheap. I mean, it was just terrible. I mean, you're talking about a woman, a superpowered woman, she's electrocuted and apparently dies. It's like, no, that doesn't happen. And so I was just so upset with this episode after the fact. And I thought to myself, you're getting upset over a TV show. But I thought to myself, because it means so much to me. And I was really upset about that. And okay, rumor has it that Connor Leslie will come back. But then why do that? I mean, it's very cheap death and it doesn't mean anything if then you're going to bring her back. So I was not happy with this finale at all. And I certainly hope they pull up their socks on season 3.
Yeah, unfortunately, this feels like Titans once again tanking a season finale. We had that with Dick Grayson. We were let down by this one. We're let down by Nightwing, and we were hoping everything would come together. It doesn't come together, and the death with Donna was just horribly done. shame on showrunner Greg Walker for even doing that, because for one thing, you wouldn't kill off Wonder Woman with electrocution. So why would you do that to Wonder Girl? It made no sense whatsoever. My wife Lori was livid about that and is basically a hair's breadth or width from dropping the show. Because she's a huge Donna Troy fan, and so all it did was just create a lot of bad will for just a cheap way to kind of send a couple of Titans off the board, take them off the board for a while, only to bring them back later on.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely.
And then you teased Blackfire. That would be something that I would have just saved once again for a bonus post-credit scene, like you did with Superboy in season 1. I thought that would have been much more effective.
Agreed.
All right.
Absolutely.
Instead of the show's final moments. All right. So we've only got 3 more minutes to talk. So unfortunately, we're not going to have time to get to our hopes and predictions. But any final thoughts before we do our big shameless plugs, everybody?
Go ahead, Nick.
I just hope that narratively things will be more cohesive, and that there will be a storyline that we care about, and they won't play so fast and loose with their villains. Other than that, the actors are good. The choices for the actors is wonderful. I just think we need better storytelling.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. I do like this cast. I like a lot about this cast and the interactions, and when they give them a chance to play together, to be the Titans, they do it well. I think the costumes look good. I think Titan Tower looks good. The world is good, but you've got to have some substance, and you've got to have some decent storytelling. What I hope they do like what we think Watchmen has done, what we think other people get together, figure out the story you want to tell, break it down totally, write all the scripts, review them, make sure everything's tight, and then start filming. Back to you, Charles.
Well, you guys didn't leave me much, did you? Obviously, I've talked about this as a writer. I was very frustrated with the pacing of this season as a whole. I thought it could have been told a lot better. A lot of things, especially the back half, for such a strong first half of the season. It was so frustrating when the final third of the season goes right downhill, and all logic goes right out the window, just for some cheap emotional drama that really was unnecessary, and just made things completely nonsensical, and you're just really being disrespectful to your audience, I think.
I agree.
And so it gets so frustrating that knowing that just give me 15 minutes in the writer's room to kind of direct things a little bit, because I would love to tinker with this and fine tune it before you get it out there. But just obviously I'm not in that position. But so I just have to hope that everybody there, learns again from their lessons from this season and gives us a better season 3 going forward.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Nick, I really appreciate it. I thought you did a great job once again. So if you, obviously we're going to be heading into our off season, but if you want to keep tabs on what Jesse and I are doing, we are going to be, we're going to be going, we're going to be actually talking, we're finishing up Watchmen season 1, but Nick, thankfully, is going to be joining us for our big Crisis on Infinite Earth discussion as we discuss parts 1, 2, and 3 of the CW Arrowverse crossover event, and we'll be discussing that on the Phantom Zone podcast. So if you appreciate it, if you guys jump over there while we're kind of in the off season as we wait for Doom Patrol season 2 in 2020, we're going to be talking that and obviously having a lot of fun. So if you enjoy what we do here, please check us out on the Phantom Zone podcast, especially for our Crisis discussion and our Watchmen discussion as well, because, hey, that's been such a great show. And if you want to reach us over there, you can obviously just, we're on Twitter at Phantom Zone Cast over there, or you can reach us, the Phantom Zone podcast on Facebook or Instagram at Fandom Zone Podcast, or we're also on iTunes and Apple Podcasts and all kinds of other wherever you get your podcasts. Wherever you get Titan Talk, you can probably find us right there on the Fandom Zone Podcast. So Nick, before we get into our shameless plugs, how about you? Where can they reach you on the interwebs?
Well, for dear listeners, when it comes to me, I am the host of the Whiskey and Cigarettes radio show, where every Sunday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. ET, we play the very best of country music from Alabama to Zach Brown. For all info to that, you can go to whiskeyandcigarettesshow.com. That will lead you to also all our social media. Outside of that, I also host Happiness and Darkness, the superhero movie podcast, where every week with a different co-host, I discuss a superhero movie of their choice. You can find that on all major platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and more. This coming week, listeners will be getting a double dose, as we'll be releasing our review of The Crow with Eve Murphy, and a few days after that, Doctor Strange with Kelly Pippin. I say double doses. Usually we release one episode every Sunday evening / Monday morning. For more info on this podcast, you can find us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/Happiness in Darkness.
Excellent. Jesse, where can they reach you on the interwebs?
So we are running out of time, so I'm going to make this quick. I am on Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW. You can find me on Facebook, Jesse Jackson, Louisville, Texas. You can hear me talk Doctor Who with Charles on Next Stop Everywhere. That'll be starting up. I'll be doing that full time starting in January. We've got New Who. We will continue to talk about the Watchmen and other fun comic book stuff on the Fandom Zone podcast. And then you can hear me talk music every week on Set Listing Bruce. Charles?
Yes, as my wife is texting me going, it's crisis time.
Yes, exactly.
So as for me, at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Instagram, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio on Facebook, and my blog of geeky things, Damn Good Coffee and Hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Titan Talk, all kinds of comic book sci-fi news of my other podcasts like Next Stop Everywhere, and the Phantom Zone podcast that I do with Jesse, and also Ghost with Twin Peaks podcast that I do with Zan Sprouse, where we talk about all things Twin Peaks, David Lynch, etc., etc. I want to apologize for not being able to get to Chuck Beener's emails. He wrote us a couple of very, very long emails. He's very passionate about what he had seen in the past several Titans episodes, but unfortunately that we ran out of time. And I'll try and maybe get those up on our Facebook page at Titan Talk, the Titans podcast, where you can reach us there. Or if you want to reach out to us on Twitter at Titan Talkcast, or if you want to drop us a line, just let us know what you thought about this episode or Titan Season 1, TitanTalkcast@gmail.com. And otherwise, we'll be back in 2020 to talk Doom Patrol Season 2 in 2020.
Yeah, Charles, if we get enough feedback, we'll do a quick feedback episode, maybe only 30 minutes or so, where we could just read feedback. So if we get more than what we've got now, we can do a quick feedback where we take turns reading it.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, drop us a line.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right. Nick, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Charles, thank you for keeping us on time.
Trying my best.
Yeah, that's right. I think we got to call it. That's all, folks, right? We got a TV show to watch.
Exactly. So everybody, thank you again for listening to us on Titan Talk all this season. Nick, thank you. Always
Thank
great
you
to
very
talk.
much.
You were fantastic as always. We're looking forward. If you enjoyed Nick, you got to come over to the Phantom Zone podcast, listen to us there. Otherwise, thanks everybody for a great 2019 for Titans, and we'll see you in 2020 for Doom Patrol Season 2 right here on Titan Talk, the Titans podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Hey.
Yo.